Welcome to this podcast of the AHK Myanmar. How we do. That is the theme of this podcast, and it stands for a short hands-on descriptions on how companies here in Myanmar are handling the crisis. Today, it's my pleasure to have Jens Michel, the CEO of METRO Myanmar, as my guest. Jens is the president of the German Myanmar Business Chamber, a good friend and somebody who knows the market very well. Hello Jens, thanks for joining me today.
Hi Martin, thank you for having me.
So, how we do? How is METRO handling this crisis? My first question would be, what are the biggest challenges during this COVID-19 outbreak for METRO?
Sure, and again, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me on this podcast. And I think starting off with a question of what is the biggest challenge at the moment during this COVID-19 outbreak, I think this is an all-encompassing question, because no one would have foreseen the excess of this initially epidemic occurrence to become a pandemic. And with that, I think it sort of leads me in what's been the biggest challenge for probably many businesses and also governments, is to clearly understand at the beginning the expansive scope of the pandemic and the situation that derived from November last year. It's really to understand actually the impact that this will have on the society, and then closer to home, obviously also to our business, to our customers, to our employees. One of the key challenges as part of that, and as you go through the understanding of what that means regionally and domestically here in Myanmar for our business, the first and foremost concern and the biggest challenge is really to make sure that your employees and the families of your employees, your customers, and the community that we live in are staying healthy and safe, and to create an environment where health and safety is the absolute number one as a business to take care of. As a second challenge really is to understand then immediately the bottlenecks and the challenges your customers are facing, because there's a very direct correlation between the way you're doing business, between the way you engage with your customers, also in tough times, and actually being there as a true partner. And that means to taking very drastic steps at some point, internally and externally, to communicate that and to act on this and go really above and beyond the potential original scope of your business, and changing the mindset throughout the entire organization. And then obviously making sure that your staff remains engaged, right? Not being distracted by the constant news flow and by the constant flow of information that is coming from social media, from conservative media outlets, but also from reputable media outlets that distracts everyone around you, and people are staying motivated, engaged, but also remain clearly educated about the situation around us, and more so keeping them actually engaged on how we can make a difference right here, right now, given the situation today. And we are finding ourselves in an extremely fluid and dynamic situation, not just in Myanmar, but globally. So the challenge is really the fluidity and the dynamic, and how to manage the impact that has and that changes on a day-to-day basis, personally, for you personally, but also for your business.
Right. So my second question, Jens, would be then directly what and how would you solve? Are you solving these challenges? Do you have any ideas which you could share?
Sure. I think there's no such thing as a formula to it, or no such thing that a one size fits all approach, because every business finds themselves in a different situation. They have a different framework, a different industry, different customer sets. So therefore, I try to keep it probably rather holistic the way I address it. And one thing is, to me, is simplicity. Keeping things simple, to be very clear and create clear priorities and communicate these priorities very clearly internally as well as externally, regardless if hard choices need to be made, which is certainly the case during crises like this, and keeping those choices and making sure that these choices and priorities are communicated and are executed in a very, very clear manner. The other thing is, for instance, to take an approach that is not binary. There's no such thing, as I mentioned earlier. I think the situation is so dynamic that the binary approach to solving these issues is not going to help anyone. So there's a daily and weekly adoption to the way we are addressing these issues right from the beginning, that we have taken a so-called non-binary approach. We have to go with the flow and we have to act accordingly, and then put measures in place that foresee a certain dynamic to happen. I think, for instance, we've been pretty early here already in January addressing things like travel restrictions, downsizing the number of participants in meetings, having health measures in place, temperature taking, simple things where we already made basically just after the Christmas break, when everyone came back in January, where we started making changes to the way we implemented measures. Another thing is, be direct. I think I'm a person, I try to be upfront with things, being honest, but also be empathetic to the people around you, understand their motivation, their situation, particularly our customers, but also our staff members. How does the situation affect them? And then yet being clear and simple in the way you communicate it. So it's visible for everyone. You're visible to everyone, to your customers, to your staff, and making sure that you really take the control of the situation as much as possible. But also, as you start implementing the initial steps of plans, of actions that help prevent, let's say, an outbreak in your company, and help prevent the business from taking negative turns, to safeguard the health and safety of your staff and of your customers. Another key element for me is actually setting immediately the pillars and cornerstones for the recovery and for a restart, because there's going to be a restart, right? And I want to make sure that we as a business are not getting sucked in to the depression part of things, but looking at how can we position the business to serve our customers throughout the crisis. How can we extend our services throughout this time of crisis? And how do we position ourselves as a business having a solid foundation to immediately and be ready to restart as this crisis subsides in weeks and months from now?
Thanks, Jens. To me, that sounds that you put on the corporate side a lot of thoughts into navigating METRO through this time. Is there any lesson learned? Something that you would say I would do differently next time, if that ever comes?
I think, given that there has been a lag time from the onset of this COVID-19 crisis, let's say having the first cases in China in November, for instance, until it officially reached Myanmar, it's basically been March. Yet we have taken actions already in January. I think the big lesson learned in general has been not to disregard these type of crisis, even though they may not be right on your doorstep, but actually China is right on our doorstep. I think we have been very, very proactive from January onwards and from the beginning and putting measures in place. Yet I think having had the mindset in November already and being alert to the fact that this could have an impact could potentially add additional time, particularly working with customers throughout the early months. But apart from that, I think the lesson learned is what I've seen around me in other businesses and how things are communicated. The key element and key learning is here, and that's an ongoing learning, is that simplicity is key. And that's what I said at the beginning, and I'm sort of looking at this with this question again, keeping things simple, keeping things easily and fast to be executed, and making sure you're there. You're there for your staff, you're there for the community, and you're there for your customers as a business.
All right, Jens, thank you very much for your time. We from the AHK Myanmar wish your business, your company, and of course yourself and your family all the best, and hope to see you guys soon in real life again. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Martin, and thank you very much for the opportunity. And as I said, I look forward to seeing you very soon in 3D, and otherwise I continue to enjoy our video catch-ups during the week.
Right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.